It is humbling to be honored by an institution that all of us here have admired me for my lifetime. And this is an emotional moment for me, a sentiment I'm sure is shared by others who receive this award. I congratulate Nina Shaw on receiving this award today. She's a great leader in the law, a great business lawyer in California, but most importantly, a leader of our community, an important leader for women throughout the United States. I learned many things through the challenging and substantive work demanded by Columbia Law School. Chief among them, an ethic and a passion that continue through today. This special institution has launched so many of us on our careers. For me, it was at Columbia Law School that I found an early direction and a purpose for my work. That discovery actually began in the first year in a clinical program when I was introduced to our first client by our professor, Phil Schrag. The law came alive immediately through the urgent need to advise an indigent client and his wife. I found risk and a motivation far greater than a grade in a course or a test score. The reality of what it meant to provide legal advice to these people and to serve as an advocate for them became visible to me. The early days of law school, Columbia Law School especially, were a challenge. The first year is a difficult year, as it no doubt was for some of you. But once I was in the arena, if you will, with a client and his case, I began to find my footing. Looking back at law school, this should not have come as a surprise to me. As the dean mentioned, I had been in an arena, the basketball arena. And that was a place in my college experience at Columbia where I learned lessons and built relationships that have lasted a lifetime. We became a championship team over the course of one season, and we were only able to do that because we were determined to pursue excellence, not as 5 individuals, but as a team. One of the true stars of that team and a lifelong friend of mine, both a college classmate and a law school classmate, is here today, a name many of you will recognize, Roger Walazik. Our team was known for its full court press, all game long, every game of the season. A full court press will only work if you're all in it together. During that season, we learned much about hard work. We focused on a shared goal, and we wanted to achieve an outcome. These were disciplines demanded in college, required in law school, and fundamental to trying complex cases. The lessons about teamwork endure, and that is because they produce for me pure joy from being in the game, from working with a team together and all pulling in the same direction, whether in a basketball arena, whether in a war room preparing for trial, or whether in the courtroom itself before a judge or jury. Columbia Law School also opened a window for me on the great social justice issues that defined the early 1970s. I found myself at a professional school that would provide me with the tools to participate in those social justice battles in the law arena. Immediately after my first year, I went to California for a summer job. It was my next intensive clinical experience. I worked with a Cesar Chavez legal team in the San Joaquin Valley, protecting farm workers on their picket lines while going to court with real lawyers in San Jose to seek injunctions against their employers to protect their civil rights. When I returned for my second year, I clearly saw the law as a means to solve problems and resolve conflicts, something I discovered that summer. Working for the farm workers in emergency litigation, night and day, all summer long, focused the mind. Watergate was also unfolding in that period we were in law school, and the civil rights debates continued with intensity, with urgency, and with hopefulness. I began my clerkship with Judge Charles Ritchie in Washington, D.C., 3 weeks before our class graduated. And that's because the judge had an important Watergate case on his docket. It was taking up a lot of time, and he needed a third clerk, and I went. Happily for me, I discovered at the same direction and purpose that I had found at Columbia Law School carry over seamlessly into the earliest days of my career as a law clerk in a federal courthouse in Washington, brimming with Watergate cases. Learning the practice of law carried well beyond law school, of course. And in one case, the teaching I benefited from at law school reappeared decades later. This concerns Professor Harvey Goldschmidt, a beloved figure on the faculty whom many of you knew. Harvey served with distinction on the Securities and Exchange Commission, both before and when he resumed later as a professor at the university. He taught us, through his example, not only about securities laws and 10b-5, but about the importance of public service and engaged citizenship. His standards were high, and he expected the most from each of us, and he was such a good person. When I was fortunate to become a trustee at the university, the administration chose to improve its faculty conflict of interest policy. Whom did President Bollinger call on for recommendations? Professor Goldschmidt. And there I was at a meeting of the Columbia trustees 40 years after law school, once again listening attentively to Harvey, furiously taking notes so that I would be able to capture once again his guidance. Let me take you to a famous Teddy Roosevelt speech about being in the arena. As you know, the trust buster studied for a time at Columbia Law School, but he left before completing what was then a 2-year degree to go to work in the New York State Assembly. Roosevelt delivered the speech I referred to in Paris in April of 1910. It was part of a speaking tour he conducted after he completed his presidency. Roosevelt praised, and I quote, "the man or the woman who is actually in the arena, who at the best knows the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly." There's another less well-known line from that speech that seems especially on point today, particularly in Washington, D.C. Roosevelt said, and I quote, "the poorest way to face life is to face life with a sneer." Columbia Law School does not face life with a sneer. It is idealistic and constructive. It's practical. It looks to the future. The law school bridges scholarship and action. It is interdisciplinary, and it is global. Columbia has long trained aspiring lawyers like all of you here to jump into the arena, to try to make a difference, to be in the game. The law school taught that to me, and it fueled my passion for the work ahead that, as I said at the outset, continues to this day. And the school continues to teach these lessons to new generations of students under the extraordinary leadership of Dean Gillian Lester. Dean Lester is raising the bar with a great team of her own. She's leading the way nationally in providing scholarships for our students, in continuing to recruit the very best faculty, and in making physical improvements in our facilities. She has done an extraordinary job. Importantly, Dean Lester is energizing a fundraising campaign that, as a trustee, I know is critical to the school's future. So please don't forget your Columbia commitment. We all need to be generous in support for the current campaign. Before I close, I want to thank my family for being here from all over the country with my grandson, or I don't know where he is now, but he was here a minute ago, and for putting up with my absences when I went off to trial sites around the United States and in Europe and Asia. I also want to recognize and thank President Lee Bollinger, I think the greatest university president in the world today. The opportunity to serve first as a member and then as chair of the university's Board of Trustees was an extraordinary privilege for me, as you can imagine. So much was learned from Lee about higher education, about the freedom of speech, both on campus and off campus, and what it means to be responsible for one of the greatest research universities of our time. This is a special day for me. I so appreciate this honor and the opportunity to thank the law school for the teaching and for the opportunities that it provided me and continues to provide so many others. Thank you.